So we must do two things, two great things together to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself. So we are at that initial point. It's the initial point of the breaking in of Christian Science on that ascending way of scientific thought, and we see that she will now give her exegesis or her interpretation of that aspect of revelation through the word order. The accent is on truth, and the epitome there is that through scientific thinking, truth uncovers error and destroys it. So let us go through now those 7 tones together. So as mind, she begins, this angel or message which comes from God, clothed with a cloud, prefigures divine science. It isn't divine science yet, but it prefigures divine science. So that with scientific thought comes the whole prefiguration of divine science, the whole quality of divine science. To mortal sense, science seems at first obscure, abstract, and dark, but a bright promise crowns its brow. And we have from our epitome book by Max Kapler the epitomization at the point of mind. Just let it be understood from now on that whatever epitomes I give are from now the epitome book. That angels are God's thoughts passing to man. So we see that that angel is a messenger, that whenever we pursue the question of angel, or the subject, the theme of angel in the textbook or in prose works, we see that Mrs. Eddy will always give it the sense of God's thoughts, you see, God's messages, God's thoughts passing to man, of exalted thoughts, holy thoughts, or she says that they are spiritual intuitions or pure thoughts from God. So it's all to do with thought. It's the first touch. That angel is the messenger that is the first touch, as though something comes to us and we aren't one with it yet. So it isn't divine science yet with us, but it is the prefiguring of divine science as it touches thought. Just think of that. The whole quality of that touch is the quality of divine science. It has the whole promise of divine science in it. She says that a bright promise crowns its brow, as though to say, divine science itself is coming, is going to come. It seems obscure at first, it seems hidden or far away or not fully disclosed. It kind of fades in and fades out. You know how it is. We get a touch of it, a feel of it, a glimpse of it, and then it It seems to recede away as we are dealing with the elements of mortal thought. And yet, that whole promise is there, and we can trust that it will unfold, that it will come in its fullness. And so she goes on to spirit, and we see that she says, when understood, it is truth's prism and praise. So we get two aspects really of spirit, the reflection of spirit and the adoration of spirit. It is truth's prism and praise. And the epitome there is that God's thoughts lend themselves to unfold to the point of understanding. It's the rainbow that is upon that angel's head that shows us that that light is a sevenfold light, that it is a sevenfold nature, that therefore it can be understood, you see, that even though it's clothed with a cloud, that the fact that there is a rainbow there is going to take that light and analyze that light. We're going to be able to apply scientific methodology to the whole question and be able to see what that message is all about. It can be understood. And then we come to the tone of soul, and she says, when you look it fairly in the face, what is that? Identity. The face is always the identity. When you look it fairly in the face, you can heal by its means. And it has for you a light above the sun. That sun in the, the glossary or somewhere in Science and Health, she says it is the representation of soul outside the body, that it is an incorporeality sense here, that soul is outside of the body, that what we are looking at, that light is outside of the body. It is an incorporeal light. It has for you a light above the sun, for God is the light thereof. Its feet are pillars of fire, foundations of truth and love. It brings the baptism of the Holy Ghost, whose flames of truth were prophetically described by John the Baptist as consuming air. And actually she gives there a beautiful flow through the levels, because she says when you look it fairly in the face, you see that it has a light above the sun, that God is the light thereof, a sense of divine science. Then she goes on to absolute Christian science and says, its feet are pillars of fire, foundations of truth and love. Absolute Christian science. And finally, the translation to Christian science, that it brings the baptism of the Holy Ghost, whose flames of truth are consuming air. See that? The three levels there, that innate ability of divine science to translate itself, to explicate everything that is implicit within itself, to explicate itself all the way down to the point of thought and scientific thought. And so the epitome at that point is that when seen in their true identity, these thoughts, these God's thoughts, seen in their true identity, they burn up their counterfeit beliefs. That scientific thought has the whole quality of divine science within itself, and so it has the whole quality of absolute Christian science within itself, the whole quality of Christian science within itself. So that message is coming to human consciousness, and we see the start of the ascending way, but we know that there is no ascending up to heaven except there first be a descending from heaven. So this thought, this angel breaking in on our consciousness, is causing us to rise, is a descent from heaven that is influxing consciousness, instigating something within consciousness, impelling something within consciousness. It is the catalyst. It is that catalyst of divine science that is influxing the whole field of human consciousness and raising it up at that initial point as scientific thought. So we come to the tone of principle, that this angel had something in his hand, had the little book, a little book, open for all to read and understand. So that science is an open book. Divine science is an open book. Did this same book contain the revelation of divine science? She asked the question. She doesn't answer the question, but she often does this in her textbook. She will ask the question, and within the question is the conclusion that she would like you to draw. That this same book did contain the revelation of divine science. The right foot now, or dominant power of which was upon the sea, upon elementary, latent air, the source of all air's visible forms. The angel's left foot was upon the earth. That is, a secondary power was exercised upon visible air and audible sin. So she's showing us that that little book is science open, science made open, that science is an open book, that there are no secrets, that there is no Kabbalistic code, there is no esoteric magic to the whole thing, no secret. You know, sometimes people will think you have a secret and you're not sharing it, you're not giving it out, or that there's some kind of a secret, what would you say, secret code, or secret society, you know, that there's a secret society and that certain ones belong to this secret society, and that you know something that they don't know. And it's not true. Divine science is an open book. The whole thing is open. Mrs. Eddy said the numeration table of Christian Science is before the people. It's before the people, and they just don't see it. They don't accept it. That everything is open. So that divine science contains the revelation, that little book contains the revelation of divine science, and that it is reduced to the divine system of Christian Science. It's open for all to read and understand. That's truth's volume. So she would come to the end of her book and say, this book is truth's volume. This is truth's volume. This is divine science. It's an open book. and we'll see that she's going to say, take that book, read this book from beginning to end. You've come to the end, and she says, now go back and read it again. And when you come to the end, then she'll say, now go back and read it again. Now go back and read it again, again. And you get that loop, that feedback loop, that you should never leave the circuitry of this volume, of Truth's volume. Don't leave the circuitry of divine science, because this is the revelation of divine science. And by going through that circuitry, that feedback, staying within that feedback loop, that thought will ascend to spiritual idea, and spiritual idea will ascend to spiritually scientific consciousness, and spiritually scientific consciousness will ascend to spiritually scientific oneness, will ascend to the city foursquare, will ascend to the awareness that nothing is going on but that city foursquare. And then we are ready for that, for the descent of that city through the gates of that city all the way down to a fulfilled sense of love in Christian Science. So it's open for all to read, and we see that that there are 2 feet, two aspects to divine science, that it has 2 feet upon which it stands, those pillars of truth and love are the 2 feet, the right foot, and with the right foot we get absolute Christian Science. We get the positive feedback circuit. That angel is really a divine cybernetic, a symbol for divine cybernetics. It is prefiguring divine cybernetics. As we know the model of being to be the divine cybernetic model, here we see that the right foot is that dominant power that is always holding its foot, always holding its power over elementary latent error, the source of all error's visible form. So it is the prophylactic art of Christian Science. It is the preventive art of Christian Science. Power over error that has not manifested itself yet, has not made itself manifest, over all error's visible forms, the source of those forms. And the left foot was upon the earth. So we now come to the level of Christian Science. That is a secondary power. So we have, with absolute Christian Science, a primary a primary power. And with Christian Science, the secondary power of divine science to exercise itself over visible error and audible sin. So it's a power over error that has seems to have come to manifestation, power over the physical, power over the claim of sin, sickness, and death. So we get that beautiful example of the angel as a scientific prefiguration of divine science, as it implicates within itself absolute Christian Science and Christian Science. She brings that all out under the tone of principle, and we see the epitome there is that an understanding of science has power over latent and concrete error. Then we come to the tone of life. And here we will see that the truth of scientific thought is ever present. the still small voice of scientific thought reaches over continent and ocean to the globe's remotest bound. It knows no bounds. It knows no limitations. It reaches everywhere. So this angel is ever present. It is all presence. The inaudible voice of truth, so it is a voice and it cannot be heard with the physical senses. It is inaudible to the physical senses, but to the human mind it sounds like a lion. It is as when a lion roareth. It is heard in the desert and in dark places of fear. This is not, you see that she does not give the text from Revelation that she is referring to, but this is found in Revelation 10, verses 3 to 6, where it says that the angel cried with a loud voice, as when a lion roareth. And when he had cried, 7 thunders uttered their voices. And I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, seal up those things which the 7 thunders uttered, and write them not. So there's, with the unsealing and the uncovering, also a sealing up of air, a sealing up of those 7 thunders. And the angel which I saw stand upon the sea and upon the earth lifted up his hand to heaven, and sware by him that liveth, that there should be time no longer. It is the handling of the claim of time, the going out of the claim of time under the impact of divine science. And so you see that she is drawing much of that to which she refers from that text of Revelation. So the inaudible voice of truth is to the human mind as when a lion roareth. It is heard in the desert and in dark places of fear. It arouses the 7 thunders of evil and stirs their latent forces to utter the full diapason of secret tones, so that the fullness of truth discloses the fullness of error, and we see that that fullness of truth is ever present. And so the fullness of the disclosing of the nothingness of error is also ever present. Is that clear? Good, thank you. That full diapason, that full range, that all 7-fold air. What is it that will uncover that 7-fold air? It is divine science speaking to the human mind through scientific thought. Okay. So we come to the tone of truth. And we'll see that the demonstration of the power of truth is experienced in the destruction of error. It's the demonstration now of truth, of the power of truth, in the destruction of error. Then is the power of truth demonstrated, made manifest in the destruction of error. Then will a voice from harmony cry, "Go and take the little book." Is that when we feel that touch of truth, that voice of truth, and how it uncovers error and uncovers the nothingness of error, that we feel that impulsion to go on, to move on, to go further, to seize that little book, to take it and eat it up. She is quoting here from Revelation 10, 7-9, where the angel, where the voice from heaven said, "Go and take the little book." And I went unto the angel and said, "Give me the little book. Give it to me. I want it. This is what I want." And he said unto me, "Take it and eat it up, and it shall make thy belly bitter, but it shall be in thy mouth sweet as honey." So she quotes that it shall make thy belly bitter, but it shall be in thy mouth as sweet as honey. Mortals, obey the heavenly evangel. And so we come to the tone of love, and the final epitome there is that when scientific thought partakes of the divine nature by reading the book, by taking that book, reading it, studying it, pondering it, taking it in, you see, imbibing it, then it brings us out of bondage and into the El Dorado of Christian Science. Our sense of Christian Science is lifted. So she says, take divine science. Read this book from beginning to end. There's that wonderful cybernetic feedback statement. Having reached the end, so to say, go back to the beginning, read it again, go back to the beginning, read it again, study it, ponder it, stay in this circuitry, don't leave it. It will indeed be sweet at its first taste when it heals you. Don't we know that? That we are, so to say, pulled in by that sweetness. We are attracted by that sweetness. That's the first taste. But murmur not over truth if you find its digestion bitter. Because when you approach nearer, as you approach nearer and nearer to the divine principle of it all, you see, to this divine principle, when you eat the divine body of this principle, as you take it in more and more, and it becomes more and more you, thus partaking of the nature or primal elements of truth and love, do not be surprised nor discontented because you must share the hemlock cup and eat the bitter herbs. For the Israelites of old at the Paschal meal, that Paschal meal being the Passover meal, thus prefigured this perilous passage out of bondage into the El Dorado of faith and hope. So to say, you have something before you. You have something before you to pass over, to come out, to come entirely out of bondage, entirely out of that belief of Egypt, that belief of material sense, mortal sense, human sense, into the promised land of Christian Science, into what Christian Science really means. And when we return to Revelation 10 and 11, it says, "And I took the little book and ate it up, And as soon as I had eaten it, my belly was bitter. And as soon as we eat it, we are on the way. We're on that way of passage. We're on the ascending way. And there's no turning back. So we will see further into that perilous passage and what that really means. That really means what we have to see to make that transition from the 10th chapter to the 12th chapter. And that would be chapter 11 in Revelation.